Recording this guy. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us for the March membership meeting. We haven't gotten together since last October to elect board members. So thank you all for joining us. To start things off, and I know that we're going to be having people sign in throughout the course of the meeting. So if I'm hopping back and forth, that's why. But to kind of start us off, I'm going to hand it over to our president, John Pearson. John, if you want to take over. I'm going to hand it over to you to talk about today's agenda as well as our welcome.
Great. Thank you so much, Curtis. Welcome, everybody, today on this beautiful Saturday for joining us with the Utah Transit Riders Union meeting. I just want to start off with a quote to get everybody kind of oriented when we think about transportation. This is from Gustavo Petro, mayor of Bogota. So a developed country is not a place where the poor have cars, it's where the rich use public transportation. I think that's something we think about a lot here, that we can be a wealthy area, and that we can develop and have income here in Utah and be using that on public transportation and be all sharing together in the benefits of public transportation. It's something to guide us for the future. Curtis will give us more detail about our activities over the past year today, as well as our plans for next year. And we've been up to a lot and have grand plans for moving forward. I just want to take a second, though, to encourage everybody to become a dues-paying member. The minimum is $5 a month or $50 for a year. You can vote on board members, you can participate in polls, and you get more skin in the game when it comes to UTRU. So today, in addition to our update from Curtis, we're also going to be hearing from Senator Nate Blouin about how to talk to decision makers here in Utah about public transportation and have an opportunity to discuss with him the state of support among the legislature who holds the power in the state for public transportation, but also what are the other power brokers and ways we can kind of leverage them in order to make change. Megan Waters will also be joining us. She's the Community Engagement Director with UTA, and she's going to discuss the August Change Day, and we'll have a chance to discuss those changes with her. And then we'll wrap up at the end with just kind of an open forum. So I'm going to hand it back over to Curtis.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Yeah, so just to provide some updates, first of all, for today, I know that Megan should be popping on any minute, so we'll give her a chance. And then Senator Blouin is not scheduled to hop on until 11:30. So if we kind of need to, and there's Megan now. So if we need to move some things around, we might just have to adjust a little bit on that one. But yeah, as far as updates are concerned, there's a couple things I want to just kind of let everyone know about what we are working on as far as what UTRU has been doing and what we'll be doing in the near future. Probably the biggest thing that we're focusing on right now is actually our petition gathering process. So right now, if you go over to utru.org/treat, that is TREATT, that is short for Transit Everywhere All the Time. Transit Everywhere All the Time is kind of our big overarching push right now to help encourage people to start thinking differently about transit and transportation and what role it can play within our communities all across the state, from Logan to St. George, from Vernal to Tooele, and points in between. And as part of that process, we took a look at it, and obviously, as many people are aware, the state of Utah really prioritizes the transportation needs of the automobile, and more specifically, UDOT and funding just general road construction, road maintenance. And what we are calling upon is for the state legislature to allocate additional funds that normally would be going towards just continuing to expand roads and start to direct that towards the 7 transit organizations in the state of Utah. You know, everybody knows about UTA, but some people may not know that Logan has a transit district. St. George has one. Cedar City has one. Even the Uinta Basin, so Vernal, Roosevelt, I'm blanking on it. There's a third one, the third smaller, Duchesne, excuse me. They have a transit network. Even Moab, or not Moab, just outside of Zion's, they have a small one as well. And so what we are saying is we want to start bringing people together and show that, hey, we as UTRU, but really we as the citizens of Utah want our tax dollars to go towards public transit. Traditionally, the only time that the state of Utah really gives money to transit agencies is when they want a project, right? Frontrunner is a good recent example. Light rail was a good example. Double tracking of Frontrunner is an example of money that when the state of Utah does provide it, it's usually A, funding from the federal government that is getting passed through, and B, it comes with a lot of debt associated with it that those transit agencies then are kind of left stuck with. Happens a lot with UTA, unfortunately. But even the smaller agencies, even if they just want to get a new bus station, like a bus station, for example, up in Logan, there's often a lot of debt associated with that. That transit agency then just kind of has left holding the tab on, and they try their best to make up for it. They do a lot of things, but the petition gathering process is saying, hey, instead of just burdening them with that, let's start helping them, those transit agencies, have the funds to help pay those items off. And by signing your name to the petition gathering process or through the petitions, you are saying, I, as a taxpayer of Utah, I, as a citizen of Utah, want some of my money to go towards that. So we've been pushing this signature gathering process basically since the start of the legislative process this past year. The legislative session is over now, as some of you may already know, but we want to keep this going. We want to have something that we can bring up to the legislature the next cycle as well, this time next year, and say, here is a list of citizens that have said, we want something different. We want something more for the transit agencies that serve everybody. We always like to remind people that even if you never take the bus in your life, more people taking the bus or trains benefits everyone for the whole host of reasons that most of you are probably already aware of. So that's one of the things that we are working on right now is that petition gathering process. Kind of related to that is we have our 7-day challenge and Transit Imagined. So Transit Imagined is a big, broad, overarching approach to our transit everywhere all the time idea. And what Transit Imagined is, if you haven't heard about it, is we are trying to build maps, trying to build concepts, trying to build in people's minds what it would actually look like to have a system that allowed people to be no more than 10 minutes away from a bus or train stop, that bus or train arrives no more than once every 15 minutes during weekdays and weekends, during normal hours, and then no more than 30 minutes on the weekends, 24/7, 365. Is it big? Is it expensive? Yes, absolutely it is. But the idea is not so much, hey, we want this to happen tomorrow. Would it be great if it did? Of course. But it's more to get people thinking about, to imagine what their lives would look like, what their lives would be if that was a reality. What would it mean if I didn't have to worry about having to check a bus or train schedule? What would it mean for me and my family if I didn't have to worry about, oh, my kid goes to school a couple miles away and their friends are a couple miles away from that. And well, the kid wants to stay after school, but I'm still at work, so I have to leave. If I could just reliably say, you know, my 18-year-old could just hop on, or what if my grandma or a grandma out there just wants to go down to the local rec center and doesn't have to worry about transfers or waiting for a ride? How would people's lives change if we could imagine this future? And so we are pushing this 7-day, or excuse me, this Transit Imagined as part of that overarching transit everywhere all the time. What we like to say is that if it is there, if you can imagine it, if you want to be there, you can take the trip. For those of you that maybe have lived on the East Coast or certainly in Europe, a lot of times, you know, I lived in DC for a while. I never checked a train route or train stop time in my life, right? I would just go to the stop and it would be there. And we want to imagine the same thing for the people of the state of Utah. Similar to that, we are also in the same sort of overarching push, doing what we're calling the 7-day challenge. The 7-day challenge, we are reaching out to policymakers up and down the state of Utah, pretty much anywhere that currently receives some form of transit service. Now, this could be just one line that runs for a couple of hours. This could be deep in the heart of Salt Lake City where there's frequent lines everywhere. But we've identified something like 1,200 total lawmakers or policymakers, excuse me, 1,200 policymakers. We've gotten about email addresses for about 900, 1,000 of them. And we've reached out to them initially back in mid-February for an initial kind of, hey, we want to challenge you for 7 days, use transit in your area, right? We want you to ditch the car as best you can and actually ride the system that the people in your areas rely on, the people in your areas depend on in order to get around. Now, we're not, completely idealistic with rose-colored glasses. We understand that a lot of people, they cannot just flat out take a bus or train to get everywhere that they need to go. So we understand that. And so what we are also saying is that, okay, if you can't just flat out, or you don't want to walk an hour and a half to get to a bus or train stop, or, an hour and a half to get to your office, it is okay to use a car to get to those locations. But what we are asking is that people make the best effort they possibly can to ride the system, that people care about. And then we're going to talk to them also about why better transit benefits the community. Again, whether you take the bus and train or not. What are the economic benefits? What are the social benefits? What are the environmental benefits to having a robust transit system in a community? We follow that up with, well, how do we actually make that happen? What are some of the things that you as a state lawmaker, you as a county council member, you as a city council member or mayor, you as a city planning commissioner, what are some of the things that you can do today to help make that a reality? Because I think a lot of people are often overwhelmed at the idea of we're just kind of stuck here. What do we do? How can we possibly make bus routes and train routes work where I live? And so we want to also provide those opportunities. And then we're going to be talking to them and we're going to ask for their honest input. We're going to say, come back after that 7 days and report to us what worked, what didn't, what did you like, what did you dislike, and what do you think you could do to help make that change? And so we have this project ongoing. This is one of those things that we're working on. We're going to be doing a second round. That's also why the petition gathering process is so important. One of the things that we're starting to include is like, hey, X number of people in your community have already signed on saying that they support transit through this petition gathering process. Maybe there's more support here than you thought. So we want to encourage you to participate in this challenge as well. So that's why we are also pushing for people to sign the petition so that we can also use that to support the challenge. We're going to be making another round to the lawmakers and decision makers that haven't responded back to us coming up this next following week. We're going to do it one more time, and then the challenge is set to go live May 20th. So that's the final week in May. We chose that day for a couple of reasons. First, it was well far out from the end of the legislative session when a lot of these policymakers, decision makers are kind of tied up anyway. Also, we do have a couple of lawmakers that have already signed up, and we wanted to give them an opportunity to relax, catch their breath a little bit. They are human beings too, with lives and all of that stuff. So we want to give them a couple months to relax. And then finally, we just kind of wanted to hope that the weather would calm down a little bit. We didn't want to do it in the dead of December or February when, frankly, if you're a first-time transit user, which a lot of these people are, and we need to keep that in mind, we didn't want to have them have their first experience be, I was waiting at a bus and it was cold and it was wet and it was, all of those things. We want to at least make it somewhat hospitable, even though we also understand that for some transit riders, they don't have that luxury. So set to go live May 20th. And we've had about 10, 15 policymakers actually respond back. I've been having communications with probably about 100 or so, working out details. Because it's not that a lot of them are not wanting to do it, but they are concerned. They are concerned that they won't be able to do what they can do. And as I like to point out, that's kind of the point, right? And so that's what we're pushing towards. Some of the other things that I want to focus on is just kind of our chapters and our forums. We are continuing to look for new chapters to start and grow the chapters that we have. I just have Cache Valley up here because they're our most recent chapter, but we do have a couple of chapters across the state. If individuals are looking to get more involved with UTRU at a very grassroots level, chapters are the way to do it. I always like to tell the people that are trying to start a chapter who have chapters going, like, UTRU really is a grassroots organization. Like, we can provide an overarching idea of what we want to achieve, what we want to do, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the people on the ground that know which particular stop needs some TLC, where the best routes might go for a community, what is the needs of an individual community, either geographically, demographically, or just by interest. Like, ski buses are always the one that kind of come to my mind when I talk about interests, right? And so those chapters really kind of come together and provide us as an overarching UTRU organization a good idea of what's actually happening on the ground. And then we as an organization can feed down some of the things that we're working on, like Transit Imagine, like the 7-day challenge, like the petition gathering, so that we can get that back and forth of support and ultimately building a bigger organization. Now, sometimes the idea of starting a chapter or joining a chapter might be a little intimidating to people, and we understand that. So we also have a forum section on our website. The idea behind the forum section is really just to give people a place to chat about specific issues in their areas. We have it broken down by transit agency. We also have it broken down by interest. Just saying, again, keeping the conversation alive around transit. Either it can be to complain or compliment, but to have kind of this open area to discuss transit and transit related issues. So I have the web links up there as well, but to learn a little bit more about chapters, just go to utru.org/chapters. To learn more about our forums or to sign up, go to utru.org/forums. So that's kind of my long and short of what's going on. I see, Megan, you have popped on. I hope you saw my email in time, but I'm going to hand it over to Megan Waters. She is the Communications Engagement Director over at the University of Utah. Hi, Megan. Thank you for joining us. So I'm going to hand it over to you. Sorry, yes, I've too many. I knew what I meant in my head. I know you're with UTA, and I know you know that. But if you got it on, I got it on the slide and everything. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Megan. She's going to give us kind of a broad overview of the upcoming August Change Day. Maybe answer some of the bigger questions. I know that we also here have some answers that we might be able to provide to anybody. But yeah, Megan, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
Okay. Thanks, Curtis. Hi, everyone. Good morning. As Curtis said, my name is Megan Waters. I'm the Community Engagement Director at UTA. I don't have slides to share. I'm not sure what all content you have up there, Curtis, but I was planning to do kind of just a broad overview. I hope many of you have heard that we are holding a public comment period for our August 2024 Change Day right now. If you're interested in more information, rideuta.com/change day. Curtis has that URL up there. There's a couple of things that I want to share. So as you're all very aware, I'm sure, we do change days a couple times a year, 3 times a year to be exact, but we are trying to preserve what we call major changes for August of this year. That will be changing next year to April, but basically if there are changes proposed to service that meet a certain threshold, they're considered major, as well as any fare changes. And if they're considered major, that triggers a Title VI analysis for us, as well as a public process. So for this upcoming change day in August of 2024, we do have a heavy fare change list, not as much service, which I'm sure you noticed. Mostly what the service changes are noted is that we aren't at this time able to add service where we wanted to restore service on the 39, the 201, and the 218. So those are priorities. You'll see a process as well coming up for an update to our 5-year service plan. That we pushed that pretty hard last year and got that adopted last year, and just we aren't able to restore what we planned to restore and to improve what we had planned to. And so the reprioritization process will happen through the 5-year service plan. But those are just noted there. And then an elimination of the Route 606, which is in Ogden, a very a specific route that's currently suspended. It was serving a community-based organization. Kind of the entire ridership was affiliated with the organization and a housing location, and they have moved locations. And so basically the ridership has disappeared on that. And so that's kind of the background for the 606. Any questions on that? Okay, so the fare changes. You can see here, thanks Curtis for displaying the web page. We do have a couple of changes that are being proposed to fare pay. You can see here on the screen, 20% discount elimination for fare pay. The intent is to replace the 20% discount with a fare capping program. Fare capping caps your payment, not your riding. So there will be weekly and daily and weekly capped rates, depending on if you're riding regular service or premium service. You can see there's a table on this page that describes what the capped rates will be. There's also capped rates for the reduced fare program as well. Y'all have questions about fare capping? You know, for some people, it's a pretty intuitive concept. For others, it's not as intuitive. So I'm happy to talk through if there are questions about how that works.
Does not look like it.
You guys are pros. Okay.
Well,
Oh no, could you talk about that a little bit, just so there's some people listening who may not know about fare capping?
Yeah, so basically, if I have my fare pay card, it will cap, and I'm riding local bus in Salt Lake City, bus and tracks, and I take 2 paid rides a day. So I spent $5. I can ride as much as I want after that $5 is paid. It won't charge me any more on that day. And then on a weekly basis, once I've spent $20 on my fare pay card on transit rides, I will not be charged anymore. If you are using FrontRunner, which is our premium service, so that kind of ups the capped rate. It is a more costly service. So you can see here, once I spend $10 a day riding FrontRunner and all other services, I will not be charged anymore on a daily basis. And the same goes for the week. So once I've hit $40 on the week, I will not be charged anymore. So you can ride as much as you want and have your spending basically kind of fixed to those rates. The week restarts on Sunday. So each Sunday your week will begin again.
Okay, so Megan, I have a question for you. Why don't we just eliminate the cash fare and go directly to the fare pay card? I mean, I've asked this question time and time again, and it's the question is, or the answer is always, well, you know, we have people who just want to use the cash, and really what it comes down to is that it's lower income people that can't afford the fare pay card, or whatever the reason is, they just don't get it. I mean, why don't we move away from the cash and just go directly to the fare pay card? Because basically what you're proposing makes it so that the cash fare again becomes a more expensive option.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. I don't see us being able to get rid of cash for the exact reasons you said. However, we are trying to entice and make fair pay an incentive for people. So we do want to push people to that electronic fare media. I don't I don't know how we can get away from cash completely, because there are for sure folks. There's a barrier, right, with getting a fair pay card, reloading your fair pay card. There's those steps involved. And so having the cash payment option is a convenient option for people if that's needed. But I agree with you. This is a great option. It is, you know, financially incentivizing, especially at the reduced fare rate. And we do have reduced fare program available on an income eligibility basis as well. And so we are trying to get more people to utilize.
So what has UTA identified as the barrier for getting people off of the cash of using cash? I mean, why is it that there are people that are still using cash? Because again, right now the fair pay card is $2 a trip and the cash is $2.50. So what's the reason?
Can I say something about that?
Please.
When last winter, when we had all the flooding, there were many people that used the cash because the only time they used it was when their streets were blocked off and they couldn't get in and out. So they used cash for a week or so, and they never rode the bus again. And then there's also the people that only use the bus when we have 6 inches of snow outside and they don't want to drive. And this winter, was that once?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Anne. I think too, there's some implications, right? Like we need to make it easier to access and reload fair pay to make that a more readily available and accessible option for people. And that is something we're working on. But right now we can't completely eliminate cash for many reasons. So thanks, Anne, for adding those examples in.
There was also a gentleman, particularly with the floods and the closed streets, that when he got on the bus tried to pay with a bus token. That's how long it had been since he'd been on a bus. Yeah. And the bus driver would not let him on. And he was a little bit upset. Yeah. I gave him my seat and walked home.
Oh, that was very nice of you.
Well, that wasn't the point. The bus driver should have let him on.
I agree. Yeah. And I can't speak to what happened in that situation. And we did phase out tokens in 2020. But yes, I agree. If you still have tokens, if people still have tokens, they can turn them into customer service and get them exchanged for valid fare. That's still available.
Megan, did you want to touch really quick about those changes on reduced fare?
Yeah. So I'll move to the reduced fare part. So again, reduced fare capping rate on the fair pay card. So you can see here, it's we're trying to keep it consistent with what it is right now on the reduced fare pay card. So it's a $1 one-way trip, a $2 per day cap, and an $8 per week cap for reduced fare on regular service. And then $4 and $16 per day and per week on premium for reduced fare. The reduced fare also is, there's a proposed change to increase the eligibility for the income-based reduced fare program. So right now, income-based eligibility is at 150% of the federal poverty level. And this proposed change is to increase that to 200% of the federal poverty level, expanding the number of people who would have access to reduced fare based on income. The final change here on the list is for UVX. UVX is in Utah County. It is currently a zero fare system, a zero fare bus line, and UTA is proposing to begin charging regular fare for UVX service. Are there any questions?
Yes, I had a question about the expansion to 200%. What programs are out there to get people recruited into that program and get them aware about it? And where can we learn more about that?
Yeah, so we do have some information about the reduced fare program on the website. Another sort of adjacent program, similar to our EcoPass programs that we work with employers on, we do have what's called our Human Service Pass program, where we work with different community-based organizations, government entities that serve lower income clients. And we're working through them as partners too. So they have the opportunity both to purchase passes from UTA as the organization to pass on at no cost to their clients. That's one piece. But they also were trying to stand up more organizations, so they will be able to verify eligibility for individuals on the back end for this. So if they're working with someone, for example, who they've gotten their zero fare pass from the organization, but they want to have their own individual form of fare media and be at that reduced rate, they could verify them on the back end. So they'll say, Megan Waters, she's a client of ours at our organization. We verify she does qualify for the reduced fare. And so there is some work being done for more community-based organizations to support the awareness and enrollment in that program.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I just have one last question on that one. Actually, what was the reason for that push? I mean, I'm supportive of it, but I'm just curious what kind of brought that on.
I think so, and to be clear, I'm with the community engagement department. I'm representing sort of the proposals, but the proposals did come from our subject matter, our specific departments with those professionals, so our affairs department and our service planning department. However, I know that we were looking at our 150% and seeing other programs in the community that were at higher levels. So you see 180, 185. And so it was a little bit of a 200 is kind of a round number, but we wanted to also be thinking about how we're supporting more of our community, especially as things get more costly, that there's an opportunity for them to receive a transit benefit in this way too.
Fantastic. Well, Megan, thank you very much. Thank you for hopping on. Always appreciate that. To learn more, where do people go?
Yeah, perfect. I would love to plug the comment period. So we are accepting comments through March 29th. So there's still about a week to submit comments. That website that Curtis had up, rideuta.com/change-day, is a great location. There's an online comment form there, but you're also welcome to email us if you have comments. There's a voicemail number, and snail mail also is accepted, but we'd really love to hear from you. There was a virtual public meeting we hosted last week on March 13th, and there's a recording of that meeting available on that page that Curtis had pulled up.
Fantastic. Well, Megan, thank you very much for hopping on. We really do appreciate that. And I will add that UTRU will be providing our own public comment. One of the things that we are doing is, if you are a dues-paying member, we sent out a poll to our dues-paying members asking them what their thoughts were on UTA Change Day. And so just a little bit of an extra way to have your voice heard, kind of as an amalgamation of the transit agency. So just another added benefit of being a dues paying member. $5 a month is all it takes, or what your maximum fare is for a single day, kind of go off of our system. But it does help us out. There are a lot of benefits associated with that. So yeah, Megan, thank you very much for joining us.
Okay.
Yep. All right.
Have a good day.
Well, you as well. So I see that we are now joined by Senator Nate Blouin. Nate, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to actually hop off here and stop sharing my screen so that everyone can see you. Maybe I can stop sharing my screen. But let's get this going. So, Senator, thank you again for joining us. It is much appreciated. Reached out to you not too long ago after kind of an initial discussion about the 7-day challenge and your willingness to participate. You weren't on when we were talking about that, but the good senator was one of the first ones to kind of sign up and ask questions and want to participate in that. And on a personal note, I've known Nate for a while, so it wasn't too hard of an ask. But I wanted to bring him on today to kind of talk a little bit about citizen advocacy, because that's also a big part about kind of what we do here at UTRU. And a lot of times people don't quite know how to talk to lawmakers, how to participate in the process. And so from the other side, kind of talk about what that looks like, how to do it, and just kind of some general tips over the next, 30 minutes or so. So I'll hand it over to you.
Okay. Oh, I thought I had like 10 minutes. So I don't know.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, 10, 15, or not 30 minutes. My timing is all off. I apologize. Next 10 minutes or so, I'll hand it over to you.
There. I can certainly answer questions for a while, but I don't have 30 minutes worth of material. Yeah. Hey, thanks for the invite, Curtis. I'm looking forward to the challenge, and I need to get up on my public transit. It's we need to work on the trails, or the transit to trails issues, because that's one of my big passions, is running and biking and skiing and getting up to the mountains. And I know the connections are not great in some places, and certainly, it may not be the priority, as we have people needing to get to work and school and that sort of thing, which is more important than recreating. But it is a big draw here. So that's something I'm having conversations and trying to move forward, but it's slow going. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I represent District 13. So if you live in Sugar House, anywhere in South Salt Lake, a good chunk of Mill Creek and Murray, or a little bit of West Valley City, I might be your senator. And this is it's a great group. Great to see you guys. Transit is a huge issue. It's something we've heard a lot about in recent years, and kind of multiple conversations going on over free fares and expanded service, and hopefully we can keep pushing that forward. I know there's support around the legislature for a lot of these things, and hopefully we'll move it in the right direction, because I know there's pushes and pulls from different areas. Yeah, so I've got some kind of do's and don'ts about communicating with the legislature. I've been in the legislature for 2 years now, in the Senate, so I have a couple more to keep learning. But I've been involved for a few years before that, and certainly have had enough experience at this point, hearing from constituents and seeing how my colleagues react to certain things, to give a little bit of a insight into what is helpful, what is productive, and what might not be. So and feel free to jump in with questions at any point, or if you have questions, write them down and leave them towards the end. Whatever you want to do, I'm good with that. So the most effective advocacy, I find, involves personal stories. If you can present your story about what you're talking about, whether it's the transit system or something else, why that impacts you, how that impacts you, an anecdote you found about something that works on the system or something that's broken, communicating that with a specific experience, a specific issue that highlights the problem, that is really impactful. Even like pictures, if you have pictures of something that's relevant, that is great. Last year we had folks advocating for caregiver compensation, not a related issue necessarily to transportation, but they're advocating for compensation for providing care to family members who were had certain disabilities and were homebound and that sort of thing. And we got hundreds of emails and calls and texts with pictures and personal stories. And I think the bill that supported that ended up passing both houses unanimously. And it was just it was great. It was bipartisan. Everyone was behind it. And it may have passed unanimously regardless of all that great outreach from people who were impacted telling their stories. But it was certainly something that got a lot of conversation. And so that was really helpful and impactful and worked very well, I think. So that's a big one. If you have expertise in the area as well, so kind of, you know, story or personal experience or like expertise. If you work for UTA, if you, and that might, you know, color your advocacy in different ways, but you know, if you work in the space, if you have professional experience or anything like that, I mean, communicating that is important as well. Okay, so moving on, another thing I would recommend doing is including, you know, your city, your address. If you're reaching out to your own representative, you know, you might be reaching out to the whole committee if it's, you know, Public Utilities and Transportation Committee or Transportation or, you know, whichever house we're talking about. If you're reaching out to the whole committee, you know, whatever. But if you're reaching out to your senator or your representative, definitely include your address in the email so that they know you are a constituent. You know, well, I can only speak for my personal experience here, but you know, I'll look at everyone's emails for sure. But if I know they're in my district and I know where they live, right? You know, I know this person or something like that, it definitely rises to the top of what you're looking at and how impactful it is. And so if you're reaching out to your, you know, designated, you know, the person whose district you live in, definitely include that. You can include it anyway. You know, some people say put I'm a constituent in the subject or something. I don't think you need to do that, but just making sure an address is in there in the body of the email or text or you know, if you're calling, mention where you live, that sort of thing. So definitely just kind of helps people prioritize and lets them know you live in, you know, you're maybe a voter in their district. So so that whatever issue is, you know, they know that their voters are worried about it. Let's see. So as far as the actual communications, I would say brevity is a good thing, you know, to a point. You don't need to say one sentence, but, you know, a paragraph or two is plenty. I think, you know, especially during session, we're not going to get through stuff that's a couple pages long or something. So try to keep it short and you know, relevant to the subject. And I would say, you know, the best ways to reach out. I mean, you know, that kind of can vary a little bit by the format of how you're reaching out, but for me, during session, text is the best way to reach me. I'm a millennial. Most of the legislature is not millennials. So that may vary by the person, but text, I think generally, even for other folks, still work well. You know, it just brings it to the top of the system. And even if I don't respond, I'm going to see a text for sure, and I'm going to see it quickly. You can email is totally fine too. You know, again, it might take a little bit longer to respond or to see it. But we have interns and staff looking at our emails. Text, you know, it's going to be my phone. It's not going to be my intern going through it. Unless that is another point though, is you'll be able to find contact information for our interns during session. Every legislator gets an intern. And so reaching out to the intern is definitely a good way to reach us as well. So you can either get their, you know, email or phone number and reach out to them, and they will get stuff. And they're great interns. They're well vetted, and so they'll, you know, they'll share the message with us or set up a meeting if that's what it is, or anything along those lines. So interns, great to know. You can find lists during session, and they're awesome to reach out to as well. And then phone calls, certainly feel free to call. You're probably going to get a message. I will listen to it. If I need to return it, I will. I think that's, you know, the standard practice for folks. It just calls are, you know, we're usually tied up with something. And so if you can send a message of any sort, you know, even if a voice message is great, I definitely appreciate getting voice messages. It's going to be less likely to be returned quickly. So if you want to just leave a message and you don't need like a response, that's great. If you want a response, you know, if it's a phone call, it's, for me at least, you know, and again, this may vary a little bit by who you're reaching out to, but it might take a little bit longer. Okay, get to know your reps before session. You know, if I'm your senator, send me an email outside of session. I'll know your name. It's easier to find people during session. You know, we'll recall these names. We'll know who's reaching out. So try to build relationships, and even if you just want to introduce yourself, that's fine. And then come visit during session or during interim. Come up, sit in on the transportation committee meetings. Come lobby on a bill that's concerning. Come out and stand outside the chamber and reach out then, and we can have someone come and grab us and come chat. So that's definitely great too, to see people face to face if they want to come up.
Let me stop you there. Well, what's interim?
Interim, good question. Yeah, so interim, we have, our session is very brief. It's 45 days from the day after Martin Luther King Day to early March. Outside of that, we're very part-time legislators. So we meet basically once a month, maybe 2 days, 1 to 2 days, depending on, how many meetings get stacked up. I think it's Wednesdays, Tuesdays, or
usually Tuesdays or Wednesdays. Yeah.
Tuesdays and or Wednesdays are interim days. I forget which one. I forget if it's the first one of the month or the last one of the month, whatever. It's all scheduled. le.utah.gov. We do have a great legislative website. I've done legislative work in other states. Their websites are terrible. Utah's is pretty good. So le.utah.gov. The calendar's all on there. Jump on, check that out. I don't think the interim schedule is up yet. It probably will be soon. But those days we meet as committees, as combined House and Senate committees, and we study issues throughout the interim. So it's a great time to come up and learn about what issues are going to be on the agenda. There's not always time for public comment during interim. During session, on a bill, there is going to be time for public comment, but during interim, there's no requirement. I don't think. Some committees, I think, have some public comment that you can speak on an issue or on a proposal or something, but because we're not talking about specific bills, it's more issue focused. It'll be something about free fares, for instance, or something like that. A high volume issue will be on the agenda, and we'll have experts present on that sort of thing. And you can come up. It's all open to the public. It's a good time to say hi to legislators, meet us, and learn about some of the issues. And so definitely check out the website for the schedule there, and come up and say hi, introduce yourself. Okay, so those are the do's. The don'ts, they're probably pretty obvious, but first I would say I get people's frustration with the process, with the issues. There's been a lot of concerning stuff that's been passed. There's been a lot of stuff about reducing transparency. It's frustrating to me, but threatening people, threatening legislators, yelling at legislators, bold letters and expletives. I get it. It's not going to be persuasive. It's gonna turn a lot of these people off. I think most people just generally get that, but occasionally, and I've gotten email. Make sure you know who you're talking to. I've gotten calls, I've gotten voice messages that are screaming at me, and saying, this bill is crazy and I hate it, and why did you guys pass this? And I'm like, well, I voted against that, and I'm very much opposed to the proposal. So just if you're going to reach out and be very angry at someone, make sure it's aimed at the right person. I would say, just be respectful as much as you can. I don't want to say that you do you. I don't want to tone police people, but if you're trying to be persuasive, trying to be respectful and data driven and focused on the issues is definitely going to be more persuasive. If you you need to yell or something, I get that too. Again, you can do what you want to do, but if you want to try and persuade some people, that's probably going to be your best bet. So I would say use, I don't know if you guys have anything set up like this, but form emails, they're fine. People can use them. We might get 50 or 100 of a form email that someone sends out a link to, and you can just fill in your information and it sends the same message. It's good because like we can tally up like how many people support or oppose a bill based off of those numbers, and like, you know, some if they have an address in them, I'll know if it's actually constituents or not. But getting the same message, you know, 100 times is less impactful, like kind of than I said, than getting like a personalized response. And again, you know, those don't need to be long. So I would try to just, you know, not use those as much as possible. If you need to set something up to mobilize people, that's fine. It just, you might not get a response, or it might not be quite as impactful as if you can send a personalized email. And I, you know, I know people don't have time to do all that all the time, but you know, try your best. Let's see, don't email, or you know, to the extent possible, I would say emailing every legislator at once, all 104 of us. We get those. You know, it's fine. You're probably not going to get a response. You know, I would target it to either, if it's about a bill in committee, email the people on that committee specifically, or your specific representatives, or if it's a bill sponsor, you know, you can email the bill sponsor, something like that. But I wouldn't email every legislator in the House, or even just like all of the senators or all of the House reps. I would, you know, target it to you know, people who are most relevant to that issue or most relevant to your district. I think that is, you know, if we see that, you know, there's 104 people CC'd on the thing, like it's, you know, we're gonna be like, well, someone else is gonna read it, or it's not relevant to me or something, and it'll get written off, I think. I kind of mentioned this, but you know, length and repetition of messages is not as impactful. So keep it, you know, pretty short. Paragraph or two is plenty. It's probably the most it's going to get read in depth. And you know, sending a bunch of the same message, or sending like every message. Someone's been sending me the same message for like 6 months straight every day. You know, I read it once, and then it, you know, I just keep getting it, and it's just like I don't know what they're trying to accomplish at this point. So you know, if you need to send something a couple times, you haven't gotten a response, that's totally fine. But you know, sending the same thing every day is probably not going to get you what you want. And then last but not least, I'd say don't proclaim to have the solution to all of our problems. You know, don't like most of these things are not black and white. I think if you say like, this is the one thing you need to do, you know, whether it's like water issues, I've gotten people who are like, you need to build this pipeline from Yellowstone Lake to the Great Salt Lake. Like that's going to solve the problem. And, you know, maybe that's one way to do it. I don't know, but I think there's usually different ways to solve a problem. And if you're, you know, maybe you are an expert in the area and you really do have a great solution. But if it comes across as like, this is the only way to do it and anything else is stupid, you know, it may not sit all that well. So that's what I've got. And yeah, if folks have questions, I'm happy to take some questions, or I don't know if there's time, whatever.
Fantastic. Yeah, we've got a little bit of time. We're running a little short, but if anybody does have any questions.
So Nate, I have a question for you. So a lot of most of our, I think all of our board members are located in Salt Lake City or Salt Lake County, and we're all represented mostly by Democrats, right?
Right.
I mean, you're my senator, and you know, I'm glad to have you. And I think everybody, you know, so how do we, as an organization, how do we go and talk to the Speaker of the House, who is completely anti, you know, transit? How do we do that?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I would probably try to find, you know, Republicans, and I'm happy to help with this, and other Democrats probably are as well. Find sympathetic Republicans and use them as a stepping stone for someone like the Speaker. I know the president, you know, he supports double tracking UTA. I mean, or double tracking the front runner system. Like, you know, so there's pieces there where there's support, but you know, I've also seen like some other not so good issues. So yeah, I mean, like off the top of my head, I'm not even sure who I would go to on this, and I could brainstorm on this, but try to find some Republicans who have voted on, sympathetic issues and share these concerns and are open to conversation, and get in with them and use them to kind of move up the chain, I would say.
Yeah,
I think
Curtis, put that down as something you need to follow up with Nate on, because I think we really need to get a good grasp of who we out. I mean, again, there's so few Democrats up there that it's hard to know who to trust outside of the Democratic circle.
Yeah. But I mean, like Wayne Harper's sometimes okay and pretty reasonable on stuff, and he's approachable at least, and he's persuadable. So someone and even Cullimore, as much as I can't stand some of his stuff, transportation, he's, I think, open to. So there's folks like you can have some conversations with, and they can run some of these issues as well and move stuff forward. But yeah, I'm happy to brainstorm more on that because it's important.
Nate, do they need to hear it from their constituents more than people from Salt Lake City being like, "Hey, come on, fund UTA"?
Yeah, that's a good point too. That's maybe something I should have put in. Is I always tell people, if you live in my district, if you live in a Democratic area, maybe try, if you have friends and family in other spots and other areas that are represented by Republicans, I mean, have them, if they're on the same page as you on an issue, have them be the one to try and reach out to their legislators and raise these concerns. I mean, and that's not to say you can't as a not a constituent, but I've certainly taken issues from folks who aren't constituents and run with them as well. But if it's just like advocacy about an issue, then that is helpful to have someone within the district doing it.
And then another question. Did somebody else?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So just another thought. So a lot of transportation's tied in with air quality, but also with affordability, and with not needing to have multiple cars, right? And affordable housing and densification. And I do climate change research, climate health research, and we had, I think it was Brad Wilson was at the Wilkes Center giving a talk last year about climate change, and kind of just trying to get a sense of what are the ways, the avenues to approach the supermajority and have our people in the organization approach their representatives that are outside the Democratic Party around air quality and climate and transit. Is that the way to approach them, or is it more around the affordability issues and around housing and economic development? Like, what's the better tone or phrasing to get at them, or lens rather?
I think housing and affordability is a key piece because density and proximity to transit and that sort of thing is great for climate change, obviously. So I would say that's going to be a more sympathetic angle, probably is going through that. And I totally agree that if we can move, obviously here in Salt Lake County where we already have the density and stuff, making sure that that we're thinking about it through that lens. And there was some legislation passed. I think it was actually Harper had a bill on like first home investment zones or something like that, and it included relevant proximity to transit in it and that sort of thing. So I think that is a good angle. There's not many good angles directly on climate issues, especially during a campaign season. But with climate change, that's still a pretty controversial subject at times. But yeah, density, moving away from multiple cars. There's so many. The reason I say density and development is, there's a lot of developers in the legislature, including Brad Wilson. He's no longer in the legislature, but there's plenty of them left. And so if we can find ways to synchronize on that issue and make sure that we are thinking about developing the spaces in a way that allows people to get close to transit and close to work and close to grocery stores and things we need to live. I think that's a great way to to get at that issue without approaching it as directly, where it might not be quite such a straightforward conversation. And I'd love to chat. I mean, if you want to chat at some other point about whatever you're working on, I'd love to do that too, because that's definitely in the area of mine. Do you work at Wilkes?
I have a grant from Wilkes. Yeah, so I do some work with them, and some other organizations as well, like UCare. So yeah, I'd be happy to set up a time we could chat about some of the stuff I'm working on and how it could, overlap with legislative action.
I think my intern from this past session has applied for a job at UCare just recently, so she's great. If I can recommend her, then happy to do
Oh,
it.
awesome.
Yeah, you two would definitely be peas in a pod, I'd say. Well, I'm going to go ahead and call it. We are at 12:05, and we still do have just one more agenda item I'm going to cover. But thank you so much for your time. Look forward to having you participate in the 7-day challenge as well. And if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
Text me. No,
yeah,
here. I'll put my number in the chat, and no, you can text me. I'll put my number in email, and you can text or call me. I'm happy to hear from you.
Sounds good. Awesome.
By the way, if you haven't read Senator Punk's letter in the Salt Lake Tribune today, you need to read that. It is a very excellent letter, Nate. I must recommend that to anybody who is on the call today.
I didn't realize it came out. Okay, thank you.
Yes,
that's
very good. Hey, you gotta say what you gotta say it. There's no doubt about that, and I commend you for doing so.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Well, thank you again.
Thank you, Senator.
Yes, thank you, Senator, for joining us. So, all right, let's hop back in. I just had a couple of quick items. So I'm moving stuff around on my screen really quick to get things back and pulled up. And of course, I have a bunch of different things here. So just really quick chapter updates. Not a whole lot to report just during the winter months from our Sugar House group, as you know, and maybe Ann, I know you're not officially part of that group, but they're doing construction in our Sugar House area. I'll give you that in a second if you want to talk on that. Otherwise, during the winter months, our students organizations have mostly, the one thing that we've been working on, is kind of working in conjunction with the Cache Valley group up there in Logan. McKay, who's in charge of that group, was going to speak, but he had to hop off. But he did type into our chat. Let's see, just had their second meeting. Already have 13 members. It's great to get interested from the community members, increasing funding for CVTBD, Cache Valley Transit District, to improve reach in more of Cache Valley. We'd especially love to see a connection from Cache Valley to Front Runner and Ogden. Members are excited about the TREAT program petition that we talked about earlier in this meeting. And interested in helping get more signatures with flyers. Brought snacks and treats to Driver Appreciation Day. Yes, the Driver Appreciation Day that took place last week. Next year, and should collaborate for a larger initiative. They are concerned about Main Street widening or one-way street plans that are currently being studied by UDOT. So those are those updates. And like I said, I don't know if you have anything you want to add for the Sugar House, not necessarily being an official member of that group, but I know you live there.
Really, it's just sad. There are fewer and fewer people using mass transit because I've said it before, because all of, not just the detours, but the detours of the detours. And unfortunately, the service alerts don't come out quick enough. And, I've stood waiting for a bus and that never came because I never got a service alert. And, I can't blame them. I don't have a choice.
Right. And that is unfortunate. I've tasked Ann with putting together a little blog post kind of detailing some of those issues. Hopefully we'll get that published pretty soon. And yeah, I always like to say that we are adversarial allies with UTA. When they do something we like, we definitely want to be champions of that. But when there are problems, we definitely want to point that out as well. And this is definitely a problem, right? So, cool. All right, well, if that is it, I want to thank everybody for participating. I just want to throw it up there. Here are all of the ways that you can get in touch with us here at UTRU. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, suggestions to take over the world. Chris is always down to one of our original founders who's been vocal on the conversation today. Chris, we love you. It's always down to flip over a bus and set it on fire if that's something you're interested in. Or if you want to be a little less violent and sign our petitions, get involved. Here are all the ways you can do that as well.
It can be a minibus if we need to, if you're not so violent.
We can get you like one of those little matchbox trucks, maybe we could do that. But
sure, yeah.
Thank you all for participating, for joining us today, and get in touch. We appreciate it. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.